Hello and welcome back to another episode of Diablo to D&D. My name is David, and today we're going to be creating the Sorceress's Hydra. But, of course, as usual, the campaign update first. So we are still going on with the Summoner. They're still running around the Arcane Sanctuary, but this time they are in the branch that in Diablo 2 would normally have just regular staircases. In this case, I decided that was way too boring, so I gave them a maze. And the way that I've been doing this is every time they move a tile, there is a chance that they'll have an encounter. If I'll roll a die, and if it's a 1, they get a combat encounter. But if it is the maximum roll of the die, then something changes. 2 walls either raise or lower somewhere in the maze. I start with a d20, so there's like a 10% chance of something happening, and then I decrease the die from a d20 to a d12, d10, so on and so forth, all the way down to a d4, and then after that, it's basically a coin toss, a quote-unquote d2. Then something's guaranteed to happen. This way, I have something like there's still a chance of something happening, but it's enough that they have some time to explore the area so that they, can actually move through the maze at a decent pace. And then when something does happen, I roll either the min or max on the die, then it starts back at 20. So you don't have too many things that are grouped together. I am loving this. They've responded very positively to the maze, and honestly, I don't know if I can keep it up for the other 2 branches, because this is cool stuff. Anyway, they have noticed that they are being watched. This desert hawk would occasionally fly into sight, loop around, fly up out of sight, and they took a long rest in a corner of the maze, and this hawk flies in, lands on the wall, and just sits there for a while and watches them, and then flies off to who knows where. So I'm very excited to see how they're going to get to the end, and they are experimenting, or I should say, I'm experimenting. They are experiencing creatures that have different what are they called? Not modifiers. 1 second. Affixes. That's what it is. Monster affixes. So in Diablo 2, there are a handful of things that creatures could, different abilities that creatures could gain. You have different, champion packs where they all have the same modifier, something like a berserker or champion, or let me see, what's some of the other ones, like ghostly, fanatic, and whatnot. And then some uniques would gain like an aura, or they would gain cold enchanted, or cursed, or extra fast, or something. And there are 18 of these that I have pulled out. There technically is another one, I think Poison Enchanted, but it's not. I think Andariel is the only one that actually has that one. So I might add that in there and get a 19th one, but we'll see. Anyway, let's head off to the Changelog. There's yet again quite a few changes to the build. I have the Assassin. Their Cloak of Shadows now gives Pass Without Trace instead of Invisibility, and you can cast it and Greater Invisibility only 3 times per long rest. You get Pass Without Trace at level, I think it's 6, and then Greater Invisibility at 14. I'm thinking about bumping Greater Invisibility to just Invisibility, so yeah, we'll see. Back when it was Invisibility at will, the Assassin would just, okay, well, I'm going to go scout. I'm going to run forward and move around and come back and be perfectly fine. And I'm like, yeah, but... So I made it Pass Without Trace because it it's less problematic. Also on the Assassin, the combat trance can be activated at any point during your turn rather than when you roll for initiative or at the start of your turn. This was something that I had done basically immediately after I had finished the video last time. I realized that it was a bit too restrictive, so it's just kind of no action required by you. You just go into a trance. It's kind of like the Barbarian's Rage, sort of, but different. But I'll see if that action economy actually fits. The Assassin now has proficiency with Thieves' Tools and starts with either a Poisoner's Kit or Thieves' Tools. It kind of makes sense. They're the sort of rogue-like class, so Thieves' Tools, it fits. I have considered changing it from a base class feature, so like you get proficiency in Poisoner's Kit and Thieves' Tools, to an ability that you get at level 1 so that you can pick up proficiency in either one. I mean, it kind of works, but also, Sorceress's Masterful Insight now clarifies when you add your intelligence to the roll. I figured I'd clarify that. The Sorceress's Charged Bolts wording has been solidified, a la Necromancer's Teeth. I basically just copied, pasted, and changed the damage type of Teeth because I got tired of wording it the exact particular way and trying to make it fit. And there was 3 different things, and I just gave up and said, okay, fine, it's a 15-foot cone, 1d4 lightning damage on a failed dex save. So instead of piercing, it's lightning. For the Barbarian, while using Weapon Mastery Berserk, you can't take reactions. Berserk, I think the restriction was on you can't concentrate, you can't ready actions. That's what it is. And I had a note beneath it saying, hey, maybe you can't take reactions at all. And so I was like, yeah, this is really, really powerful. So I bumped that in there. Just makes it a bit more restrictive and kind of balances out a bit. The Druid is now proficient in all simple weapons. I had a discussion with one of my players about the Druid's proficiencies in weapons, and one of the things that got brought up was that there is a specific list of items or of weapons that they are proficient with. I pulled it directly from the Druid's list, the D&D Druid's list, but because it is a half caster or quote-unquote half caster, I decided that it would probably be better to go off the more like the Rangers, which get simple and martial weapon proficiency. So I just said, yeah, they're proficient in all simple weapons rather than slings, staves, quarterstaves, daggers, sickles, and whatnot. Also on the Druid, Form of the Beast now allows you to use Wear Form at will. Form of the Beast is your 18th level capstone ability. This was a question mark for quite some time. I hadn't really figured out what I wanted to do. And before the Wear Form revision, it just said that you gain a use of your Wear Form back on a short rest. Now that all your charges come back on a short rest, I said, okay, well, let's just say you can do it at will, kind of mixing in the Barbarian's Rage and something else. I think the Druid might get... No, that's also short rest. Their shape-shifting is also on a short rest. It does possibly require balancing because you can turn into your Werebear and take a ton of hits and then drop out, then drop back in. But it's also 18th level, and it's not like dealing a ton of damage. It just makes you really tanky. So, I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. Paladin, the conversion ability no longer works on creatures with low intelligence. This kind of makes sense. If you're facing down a crawling hand and you try to persuade it, it's not going to be really persuaded because it's a dead hand. Hooray. So, yeah, I think it is intelligence 4 or less doesn't work on it. So you have to be talking to something with intelligence 5 or greater, some measure of human-like intelligence, greater than an animal, basically. All right, that's it for the changelog. So let's jump into how Diablo 2 handles the Hydra. Here we are on Icy Veins, and here is the Hydra. Summons a multi-headed beast of flame to reduce your enemies to ashes. This is a 30th level ability. It deals a decent chunk of damage, and keep in mind that it has a duration of 10 seconds. You can have 6 Hydras, and it fires like 3 times a second. It is a ton of amazing... I love Hydra, because it's just kind of this fire and forget ability. I think summoning 6 Hydras at a time in D&D is going to be a bit much, especially making 3 attacks a round, so that might get nerfed. But it's still a very, very fun ability. All in all, it's a pretty simple ability. There's not really much to talk about here, so I think we can just move on to some of the other inspirations. Let's take a look at Dungeons & Dragons. Initially, I had thought of Spiritual Weapon. You are creating a thing that can attack very much like Spiritual Weapon. You create a floating spectral weapon within range that lasts for the duration or until you cast the spell again. And then when you cast a spell and as a bonus action on later turns, you can move the weapon and smack another creature. It's very handy. It's fairly simple and a staple of clerics. Just being able to create this thing and use your weapon. It's weaponizing your bonus action. And because it's a 2nd level spell, you get this at 3rd level. It's pretty darn good. But let's see if there's anything else that I can think of. Hey, the Fathomless Warlock. Tentacle of the Deeps. Tentacle of the Deeps? Huh, I always thought that was Tentacles of the Deep. Anyway, you magically summon a spectral tentacle that strikes at your foes. As a bonus action, you create a 10-foot long tentacle at a point you can see within 60 feet of you. Lasts for 1 minute or until you use this feature again. Deals 1d8 cold damage and slows a creature by 10 feet. And it has a reach of 10 feet. And then, as a bonus action, you can move the tentacle up to 30 feet and repeat the attack. And then it's proficiency times per long rest. I love this ability. I'm actually playing a Fathomless Warlock. I've mentioned this a couple of times in a campaign. And this is so nice, especially when you get to Guardian Coil at 6th level that can protect people from harm. Now, the Hydras don't exactly move, but there are a few things that we can pull from this. First off, having a decent range. If they don't move, they'll have to have some way to get to a creature that is, within range. So having something that's even like a 30 to 60 foot range would be good. And then having a limit on the number of times per long rest you can actually use it would be very good. Let me see if there's anything else. No, I think... Okay, actually, you know what? Speaking of which, let's go to see its attacks. Well, what could be a good basis for its attacks? Well, Firebolt is pretty darn good for its attacks. 1d10 fire damage, has a decent range. 120 feet right there. It does scale up as well. So that's pretty good. Let's take a look at Scorching Ray. Scorching Ray is fairly similar, 120 foot range fire damage. It is a 2nd level spell, but that makes sense because it's 3 rays of fire. And that is very similar to how the Hydra works in Diablo, having 3 attacks per second. It's pretty good. The damage is 2d6 versus Firebolt's 1d10. Clearly fire damage. Let's see. Scorching Ray versus Firebolt. Firebolt is a cantrip dealing a single damage die. It would be good. It does get better. Versus Scorching Ray, 2d6. It's an average of, it's an average of 7 damage each round, or for each ray. And Firebolt has an average damage of, 10, 11, 5.5. So Scorching Ray is going to be a lot more fire damage, a lot more power behind it. But I think I like the damage of Firebolt. It's just nice and simple. So, there is, of course, one more thing that we have to look at, and that is the official creation from the 3rd edition crossover. Hydra, Fire, Conjuration, Creation, Fire, level Sorceress 6th, or Sorcerer or Wizard 8th. Keep in mind that the maximum level of the Sorceress's spells is level 6, that you get at level 12, I think, and then you just get more spell slots. Components, verbal and somatic, casting time 1 action, range 30 feet and see below, effect 3 heads that launch 2 firebolts or 1 fireball per round. Whew, that's a lot. Duration 6 rounds, saving throw, see text, spell resistance, yes, fireballs and fireballs only. At the point designated within range, 3 draconic heads burst from the floor. The heads each spew 2 firebolts or 1 fireball per round, as the spells, at caster's foes within 90 feet of the Guardian. The Hydra only launches a fireball at foes far enough away so that the caster and her allies are not affected. The firebolts deal 5d4 points of fire damage each. The fireball is a 20-foot diameter area and deals 10d6 points of fire damage. A reflex save is allowed against either effect for half damage. The caster need not concentrate on the Hydra. If no foes are in range, the Hydra holds its fire, though it vanishes after the spell's duration elapses. At this time, the head sinks back into the earth. So a couple notes on that one. Like I said, for the level, Sorceress 6 is the highest spell slot that they have. And keep in mind that they don't get the flexibility that 5th edition casters have. They had to prepare each spell at the level they wanted to cast it. So if they wanted Fireball, they could prepare it at 3rd, I think it was 2nd level at that time. They could prepare it at 2nd or 3rd or 4th or 5th or 6th, but they could only cast that spell at that level. So, you're giving up quite a bit, but that is 3 fireballs a round. Granted, it was, half the size, because it says diameter, not radius, but it deals a heck of a lot more damage, and that is a ton of damage. But it was a one and done. Unless you had more castings of it at higher levels, but, you get the picture. So that's fairly powerful. I think I don't want to go in that direction. I think too many attacks and or throwing a fireball is probably too powerful, but let's put this all together and see what we've got. Hydra! At 14th level, you can summon a burning multi-headed Hydra that spits fire at your enemies. As an action, you summon the Hydra in an unoccupied space you can see within 60 feet of you. The Hydra lasts for 1 minute or until you use this ability to create another Hydra. When the Hydra is summoned, you can have it make 2 ranged spell attacks against 1 or 2 creatures of your choice within 120 feet of it, dealing 1d10 fire damage on a hit. You can spend a bonus action on subsequent turns to have it repeat the attacks. You can use this ability twice per long rest. So, a couple notable things about this one. 1, it can't be moved. It sits in place. 2, its range is 120 feet. This is basically Firebolt. You're essentially casting the cantrip Firebolt at 1st through 3rd levels or 4th levels, but you get it twice. And I'm thinking instead a number of ranged spell attacks equal to half your proficiency modifier rounded down, so that you do get that 3rd attack at higher levels. Maybe? That is something that I could probably just put in the changelog, so I'll just leave it at 2 right now. And the reason why that is fairly powerful, it was 2d10. It was 1 attack with 2d10 fire damage. And then I was like, wait a second. Fire Mastery adds your intelligence modifier to the damage you deal. So bumping it to 2d10 allows you to do, say, 2d10 plus 4 or 5 damage. You want Eldritch Blast. It's basically turning it to a fire version of Eldritch Blast with the Agonizing Blast upgrade. So, it's pretty good, I think. When you summon it, it is an action, which means that you won't get Firebolt or Inferno or Firewall as your action. But I think making it a bonus action to summon at the outset is a bit too powerful for some reason. I don't know. I'll think about that. It could be just it is a bonus action to summon. But I actually think that's a bit... No, I think that's... other than the tentacle... No, Spiritual Weapon is a bonus action. The tentacle is a bonus action. So, you know what? I think that could be perfectly fine to use. Yeah, okay, fine. There we go. So that got probably buffed. I don't know how powerful that is, but hey, you know what? Sure, let's go with that. You're creating a Hydra. This is your quote-unquote normal capstone ability. You do get Fire Mastery at 18th level, but that's technically kind of supposed to be your class capstone ability. But yeah, whatever. So I think that's pretty much it. There's nothing more to say. Fairly simple, much like how it is in Diablo 2. So I think that is going to be it. Alright, you can find me at XenozFan2, that is XenozFan2 on Twitter and Reddit. And you can contact the channel directly at DiabloTODND on Twitter and YouTube. Thank you much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Have a good whatever.